This page is dedicated to the nervous system, and I am especially going to be focusing on and talking about the brain and the brainstem and the spinal cord, because I am focusing on the head and neck region. There are two main divisions of the nervous system: the peripheral nervous system, or the PNS, and the central nervous system, or the CNS. The CNS consists of the brain and the spinal cord, and the peripheral nervous system is all other nerves outside of the CNS. So on the very bottom, we have the cerebellum. This is important for our sense of balance and our so we can move around. Above that, we have the cerebrum, which is this whole big part. It consists of a bunch of different lobes. In the very front, most anteriorly, we have the frontal lobe, which is important for our motor control. On both sides behind that are the parietal lobes. These are important for our senses of touch and pain. In the very back is the occipital lobe. This is where our visual cortex is, so our sense of sight. And then on both sides we have the temporal lobes, and this is where our auditory cortex is, so our sense of hearing. Coming out of the brain, we have the brain stem, and then that leads into the spinal cord. So the brain is two hemispheres that kind of mirror each other. There are two parietal lobes and there are two temporal lobes. The rest span both hemispheres, but they are still split up. I'm just coloring these in with the same colors that I used above, hopefully. This is if we were to split the brain in half. And this part right in the center here is what is referred to as the diencephalon. It has a lot of very important functions. The first part is the thalamus. That's that guy there. There's actually two of them, one on both hemispheres. That's the relay center of the brain. All of the nerve impulses go through the thalamus. And then we have the hypothalamus, which is that region there. The pineal gland, which produces melatonin and helps us sleep, and then the pituitary gland, which releases a lot of hormones, and I talk about that in my endocrine video in my notes. I'm going to do a close-up of the brainstem. So again, on the very top we have the thalamus on both sides. This is an anterior view, so you're viewing it from the front. Under that is the midbrain, which leads into the pons, and then the medulla, or the medulla oblongata, and then finally into the spinal cord, which continues down the length of our back. These little protrusions are the cranial nerves. There's a bunch of them that I didn't even draw. I want to show some real images of a brain. So this is an axial view. This is the same patient. I got these from radiopedia.org. They're just two different imaging modalities. And this patient has a non-cancerous tumor. You can see it on their top left side of their brain. Yep. This first image is a CT scan, and this other one is an MRI T2 weighted scan. So you can see the different ways that the brain looks in these two modalities. This is also called a meningioma because it's a tumor that forms in the meninges tissue. So what are the meninges? These are membranes. There's 3 of them that line the skull and the brain. So up on top we have the skull, we have the brain below, and then that's just a little blood vessel in the drawing. The first one is the dura mater. This root word means hard or durable, and mater means mother. The second layer is the arachnoid mater. Arachnoid means spider. That's where the root word is from. And then the third one is pia mater, and pia means tender, so not hard. And I'm just going to give these some different colors and color them in. The dura mater is the most superficial against the skull. The arachnoid mater is after that. And then between there, that's the subarachnoid space. It's filled with cerebrospinal fluid and different blood vessels and nerves and such. And then the pia mater is up against the brain. So let's look at some actual cells that you would see in the central nervous system. You've probably heard of gray matter and white matter, but what's the difference? I'm going to do a quick little drawing here where white matter's in the bottom left corner and gray matter's in the top, or the rest, so kind of like the top right. And then we're going to draw a little blood vessel traversing through the gray matter. And the first thing we're going to draw is a neuron. So these are the cells that actually transmit electrical impulses. So we have up top is the neuron body where the nucleus is, the integrating center, and then this long leg is the axon, and this is where it's going to propagate that nerve impulse, the electrical impulse. Covering the axon is a layer of myelin. So gray matter contains neuron bodies, and white matter contains myelinated axons, and it's actually this myelin that creates the white appearance. The myelin is a coating that protects and insulates the axon. But what creates that myelin around the axon? That's another type of cell that you're going to find in the white matter. Oligodendrocytes is what they're called, and this is only in the CNS, so these are types of glial cells that create the myelin in the central nervous system. Glial cells are important to know. Neuroglia. These are the other type of cells besides neurons that exist in the nervous system, and they support and assist neurons. They don't propagate any nerve signals. Some more glia that you might see in the gray matter. This is called a microglia, and this is important in the immune response in the brain, protecting against pathogens. There's actually a bunch of glial cells. I'm just going to talk about some of the most common ones or most important ones. This guy connects to the blood vessels and to all the other kind of cells. He's called an astrocyte, and he provides support for neurons, and they also play an important role in the blood-brain barrier. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Astrocytes are the most abundant glial cells in the nervous system, and there are 10 times more neuroglia in the central nervous system than there are neurons. So a lot more of these supporting cells. So what is the blood-brain barrier? This is a selectively permeable boundary that is around all or most of the blood vessels in the brain, that keeps things from entering the brain, except for like water. It exists in most parts of the brain. Some places it doesn't, is like the hypothalamus and some other integrating centers that need a blood supply. So the summary here is that the gray matter is where synapses and integration occur, and the white matter is where the nerve impulses actually are propagated. So, but where do these actually exist in the brain? I did some little cutouts here. This is like a cross section. So this top one is a cross-section of the cerebrum. Then we have a cross-section of the brainstem and a cross-section of the spinal cord. My key up here on the right is that gray matter I'm going to highlight in this gray color, and white matter I'm just not going to highlight. The brainstem and the cerebellum you can see down there aren't included in this. In the cerebrum, the gray matter is mostly located on the outside of the brain, and then the inside is mostly white matter. Remember that the gray matter is the integrating centers. We also have gray matter in places on the inside, like where the thalamus is. In the brainstem, the gray matter is located on the inside and surrounded by white matter, and that's the same as for the spinal cord, where the gray matter is kind of like in an H or butterfly shape, surrounded by white matter. These two holes here are actually not white matter. This is the central canal that runs the length of the brainstem and spinal cord, and it's filled with cerebrospinal fluid. So that is my page on the nervous system, just very quick summary. These notes will be available on the webpage. Thank you.